Now, the Pentagon says two Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets flew near a U.S. Navy vessel in international waters Thursday in a, quote, highly provocative move.
In recent months, U.S. Navy ships have been operating in the Caribbean as part of routine security patrols. Most of that activity never draws attention. But this brief encounter did. During an operation in international waters near Venezuela, Venezuelan military aircraft flew close to a U.S. Navy vessel. The Pentagon later described the move as provocative. No weapons were fired, nor did the ships change course. The story took no time to grow louder. Aircraft carriers appeared in headlines. Aggressive dives were added. What began as a limited flyby turned into a dramatic confrontation that never actually took place. When you strip away the exaggeration, the verified details point to something more interesting than a standoff. Why did the U.S. Navy choose to hold its position and say almost nothing? And what did that silence mean to communicate? The encounter happened over the Caribbean Sea, in international airspace. This is a vital fact. International airspace means no country controls it. Military aircraft can fly there legally. Naval vessels can operate there without permission. That legal gray zone is where most modern military signaling happens. At the time, U.S. Navy ships were conducting routine operations in the region. These patrols are not unusual. The Caribbean has long seen U.S. naval presence tied to maritime security, counter-narcotics missions, and regional stability. Venezuela watches these movements closely. When military aircraft approach a foreign warship in international airspace, it sends a message without crossing a legal boundary. No borders are violated. No shots are fired. Yet the intent is still understood on both sides. That is the environment in which this incident unfolded. Not over land, not near a base, and not during combat operations. Just open water, open skies, and two militaries reading each other's moves. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, two Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets flew close to a U.S. Navy warship operating in the Caribbean. The Pentagon later described the maneuver as provocative. That description is crucial because it sets the boundary of what was observed. The aircraft did not fire weapons. They did not attempt to communicate, and they did not cross into restricted airspace over the ship. The U.S. Navy vessel involved was a destroyer, not an aircraft carrier. No carrier strike group was part of the encounter. That distinction was lost in many online retellings, but it is clear in official reporting. The flyby was brief. The aircraft approached, passed near the ship, and then departed. There was no pursuit. There was no public indication of radar logs, warning shots, or intercept orders. From a military standpoint, this was a show of presence, not an attack. The jets made their point by being seen, not by taking action. And just as quickly as it began, the encounter was over. Military flybys happen. Not all of them draw attention from the Pentagon. This one did because of how it was done. The Venezuelan jets flew close enough to make their presence unmistakable. There was no coordination through standard channels, nor was there any advance notice. Moreover, there was no effort to signal routine transit. From the U.S. Navy's point of view, that choice removed ambiguity. Close approaches like this compress reaction time. They force watch officers and air defense teams to treat the contact as serious until proven otherwise. That does not mean panic. It means focus. For the U.S. Navy, the concern is never the aircraft alone. It is the context with unknown intent, zero communication, and a region where tensions already exist. That combination changes how an approach is read. Calling the maneuver provocative was not about emotion. It was about signaling. It told Venezuela the message was received. It also told other regional actors that the United States took note, without turning a short flyby into something larger. In modern naval operations, words are often chosen carefully because they replace actions. And in this case, the wording carried the response. The U.S. Navy did not chase the aircraft. It did not alter course. and it did not escalate the situation in public or in the air. The destroyer continued its mission as planned. From what was disclosed, the response stayed procedural. The encounter was logged. Radar tracks were reviewed. Communications were documented. The event moved up the reporting chain and out of the tactical space. That choice was deliberate. A visible response in the air would have raised the stakes. It would have created footage, headlines, and room for miscalculation. Instead, the Navy treated the flyby as an isolated action, not a trigger. This approach fits how the US operates at sea. When an encounter stays short and stops at signaling, the priority is to avoid turning it into a cycle of reactions. Nothing about that suggests weakness. It reflects confidence that presence alone was already doing the job. In moments like this, the US Navy measures outcomes, not optics. Responding aggressively would have given the flyby more weight than it deserved. It would have turned a short encounter into a headline-driven exchange. Instead, the Navy chose to treat it as background noise. That choice carries its own message. When a warship continues on its planned route, at the same speed, under the same posture, it signals confidence. It says the situation did not rise to the level of concern. It says the ship did not feel threatened. For Venezuela, that matters. The flyby was meant to draw attention. Ignoring it denied that payoff. There was no visible reaction to amplify, no moment to replay, no evidence of disruption. At sea, control often shows up as a calm routine. The ability to keep moving outshines the ability to respond loudly. And in this case, the absence of reaction was the response. Flying close to a foreign warship tests how alert the crew is. It tests how quickly the situation is acknowledged. Most of all, it tests whether the other side feels the need to respond publicly. This approach sits in the space between peace and conflict. For the US Navy, these moments are familiar. Similar flybys have happened in other regions, carried out by different countries, under different flags. The pattern stays the same. Stay predictable. Stay professional. Do not give the encounter more importance than it earns. Predictability limits risk. When both sides understand the boundaries, incidents end without escalation. No one misreads intent. No one feels cornered into acting. That is why these interactions often look uneventful on the surface. The real work happens silently, after the aircraft are gone and the patrol continues. And that is exactly how this one ended. This flyby was less about military capability and more about signaling intent. Venezuela's Air Force operates a limited number of aging aircraft. Deploying fighters near a US warship was a deliberate choice, not a routine patrol. It showed a willingness to be seen, even if the ability to do more was constrained. The message was regional. By acting near US naval operations, Venezuela signaled defiance to domestic audiences and nearby states watching from the sidelines. It was a reminder that Caracas still wanted a voice in how security dynamics play out in its surrounding waters. But the limits were obvious. The aircraft stayed unarmed. The encounter was brief. There was no follow-up presence or sustained pressure. That tells its own story. The goal was visibility. In other words, the flyby wasn't about changing the balance at sea. It was about showing up and then stepping away before the cost rose. Nothing exploded that day. No warnings turned into weapons. No ship changed course. And that's the point. This encounter was about who could afford to move on without reacting at all. One side came close to being noticed. The other treated it like just another moment at sea. That contrast is how modern military pressure works now. So here's the question worth leaving with. When silence utters more than action, who really controls the situation? Drop your take below in the comments. If you want more breakdowns that separate what happened from what's exaggerated, subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who likes facts more than hype.